Over the last 3 videos, we've covered conversion therapy, what it is, the devastating harm it can cause, and what to look for to make sure that we can recognize it when it appears, even in covert forms. But today, we're asking a bigger question. What can we do to prevent conversion therapy from showing up in our communities and causing harm? We ask big questions like these and more on No Silly Questions, which is what you are watching right now. No Silly Questions is our place for LGBTQ FAQs and fast facts. There are no silly questions, so ask yours at outcenter.org/questions. Okay, so if you are waiting for a clean, simple law to just ban conversion therapy across the board, we need to have an honest conversation about where we stand right now. Let's start with the good news. In 2023, Michigan passed a ban on conversion therapy for minors. It was one of the strongest in the country. But in December 2025, a federal appeals court blocked that law, saying that telling a therapist what they can or cannot say violates the First Amendment. Now, a major case called Childs v. Salazar is sitting before the Supreme Court right now. Whatever the court decides is going to set a national precedent. And the honest truth is this: calling your state legislator or trying to pass a local city ordinance won't meaningfully change that trajectory. But it's not all bad news either. The law is only one tool. Even if legislative bans are off the table, there are other angles to approach this issue. You don't have to be a policy expert, you just gotta be willing to do something. And so I'm gonna give you a few suggestions. First, this is one that I'm going to reiterate from our previous videos. The first important thing to do is to share accurate information and share it widely. So share this video series and others like it. Share OutCenter's resources or other resources like the ones that we'll continue talking about, like the Trevor Project's reports on conversion therapy or the Movement Advancement Project's surveys about conversion therapy survivors. Normalize talking about LGBT identities and how normal it is for people to be queer and why it's not a bad thing at all and not something that needs to be changed. Number 2, this is something that you'll recognize from our previous video about how to actually identify conversion therapy and SOGI's sexual orientation and gender identity change efforts and similar practices. As mentioned, most conversion therapy isn't going to advertise itself with blinking neon signs. It's important to know the buzzwords so you can spot it in the wild. We've talked about religiously coded language like carrying the cross of same-sex attraction, saying things like gender discordance instead of gender dysphoria. Also, be on the lookout for some cleverly named alternatives to affirming therapy, such as reparative therapy or gender exploratory therapy. I know that last one is tricky. It sounds like it could be a good thing, but it's really not. Conversion therapy with a smile is still torture, so it doesn't matter how somebody dresses up these names. If you're looking for a good therapist, be sure to check out the forms of therapy that they talk about, and even better, go a step further in your research. See what books that your therapists are recommending. If they're coming from backgrounds that look a little bit dicey, there are other options. All right, let's talk about some other strategies that we haven't talked about before in previous videos. Some of these might seem small, but they'll make a difference if many people contribute. So strategy number 3 is to leave public reviews for affirming care and providers. Affirming therapists, pediatricians, clinics can sometimes be invisible to the people who need them most. For good or bad, many of us have gotten familiar with learning about good and safe providers through word of mouth. That said, if it's safe to do so and isn't going to out a provider, it could be a good idea to leave a positive review on a social media site or on some other review app. Okay, number 4, support or start a GSA, known as a Gender and Sexualities Alliance. GSAs are some of the most evidence-based and evidence-backed protective factors that we have against the harms of conversion therapy for young people. When kids have an affirming peer group and trusted adults, their self-harm risks drop dramatically. And here's a really important, really great strategy. GSAs don't just have to be in high schools. You can start an affirming youth circle or gathering at a local library or a community center or an affirming church. If you're one of these community organizations and you think that having a GSA as a part of your org is a great idea, give us an email at info@outcenter.org. Number 5, become a highly visible ally. We sort of talked about this in the last video, like becoming a trusted adult, but let's make this more practical. How do we become trusted? Well, one way is through visibility. So if you, say, work at a school, put a rainbow flag in your office. Add those pronouns to your email signature. Show up to Pride Fest. Be the person who is at school board meetings, who is speaking up and standing for queer kids. Faith leaders, you also have a role to play here. Can you add a little rainbow flag to your church or faith community's website? Another thing that's important too, in terms of being an ally, is to talk the talk. So be sure that you are reading books about queer identity, how to respect others. If you have questions about different identities or genders or pronouns, do your part to learn those things and become conversant. So that way it doesn't sound like you're new to this if somebody is looking for a trusted peer or ally. Number 6, audit your organization's referral network. Many of us have the opportunity to connect with community partners and service organizations. Across a wide range of jobs, we might make these connections and partnerships. Thinking about schools and clinics and places like that. But, if you are working in a corporate HR department, if you run after-school programs, maybe you volunteer at a recovery group, maybe you run a yoga studio and you have other places you direct people for holistic wellness. You or your organization might have a list of local counselors or providers that you might hand out to people for referrals or to people in crisis. Ask to see your organization's referral list if you're not the one in charge. And advocate and make sure that the people on that list don't practice any sort of change efforts. And make sure that you replace them with vetted affirming providers too. Number 7, it's so important that we're also sharing the stories of people who have gone through it and seen it firsthand. Survivor stories shift public perception. If you follow along with the Childs v. Salazar case, you will know that organizations like the Trevor Project are coordinating amicus briefs and survivor testimony any chance you get. Click a share button on social media. Write a letter to the editor for your local paper talking about these stories and how it affected you. This is a highly accessible, incredibly concrete way to reach various audiences. Number 8, where appropriate, you can make reports. Even if the Supreme Court says conversion therapists have free speech, the First Amendment does not protect medical fraud or false advertising. If a local practitioner or camp or clinic advertises a cure or a change for LGBT people or guarantees that they can change somebody's orientation, that's fraud. You can report these businesses to the Michigan Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division. If they are a licensed health professional and engaging in these harmful practices, you can file a complaint with the state licensing board, whether that's the Board of Psychology, the Board of Social Work, the Board of Counseling, or the Board of Marriage and Family Therapists. We can use consumer protection laws or the ethical guidelines that those therapists have voluntarily agreed to hold them accountable. Number 9, well, we've got to plug OutCenter in here somewhere. You can bring OutCenter's Pathways of Belonging training and workshops to your workplace. A very strong long-term argument against conversion therapy isn't law. It's a cultural saturation of affirmation. If you want to change the system, change it. Pathways of Belonging is not a DEI workshop based on corporate compliance. Rather, it's a way of helping people become curious about themselves, no matter who they are, gay or straight, cisgender or trans. When we learn to develop curiosity, it helps us develop empathy. And it also gets us starting from similar points of curiosity rather than places of defensiveness. Again, send us an email at info@outcenter.org if you want to learn more about that. The world is becoming riskier and less welcoming to trans people day by day, but it's time to turn the tide. I'm not expecting anybody who watches this video to do all of these different things, but if you want to make an impact, maybe let me challenge you to do just one of these things. Even a relatively small show of support could be all the difference between somebody engaging in self-harm or not. You never know what kind of impact you have, so I encourage you to try to make at least a little bit of a difference where you live. Any little bit helps. So we can't promise a clean legislative victory at the Supreme Court. They're going to do what they're going to do. But what we can say, what we do have the power to do, is create cultural change in our cities, in our townships, in our counties. And so I look forward to seeing you out and about working for change to make our homes a safe and welcoming place for everyone. Okay, if you have any questions about anything that we've covered in this series, or you need help taking one of these steps, reach out. Like I said, there are no silly questions. And if you want to ensure that we can keep these messages and this information going across Southwest Michigan, and if you want to help the LGBT community feel safe and understood, partner with us. You can give a gift at outcenter.org/donate and help us take this work to the next level. Thanks for watching and thanks for learning. Let's get to work together.